Hello and welcome back to World 360. Could the BRICS countries, which includes Russia, India and three others, launch a single currency like the EU's euro? Are Middle Eastern foes Saudi Arabia and Iran starting to take baby steps towards restoration of ties? We'll answer all this and more in today's episode. First up, the BRICS countries. As you know, the BRICS countries comprise Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa and represent the largest developing economies. This grouping was formed in 2009, but its dynamic has certainly changed in recent years given Russia's aggression in Ukraine and Chinese aggression in South Asia. However, last week, a member of the Russian parliament was in Delhi speaking at a business forum. Here, he said that the BRICS countries are working on a single currency that could be used for trade settlements.
According to Sputnik News, this is what he said.
In the wake of the Ukraine war, we're seeing more and more countries opt to settle trade in currency swaps. Brazil and China agreed to conduct all future trade transactions using their own currencies. We know that India has allowed rupee-ruble payments with Russia. And reports are also emerging that China's yuan has already replaced the dollar as the most traded currency in Russia. So clearly, a single currency among BRICS countries would benefit, namely Russia. But is it even viable? Also, would China and India even agree to a single currency given the border standoff in Ladakh? There are a lot of tricky elements to this, both economical and geopolitical. The Financial Times recently came out with a report explaining that BRICS countries are dramatically different in terms of their economic trade growth and financial openness. Russia is economically the weakest of the group, while China is the dominant player. Also, what's to say India will even be open to a single currency within a group where China is dominant? Let's not forget that India opted out of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership or the RCEP years ago due to fears of cheap Chinese imports flooding its markets. If we zoom out for a second, the bigger story here is that the hegemony of the US dollar is being brought into question. We've seen how China's ties with Saudi Arabia have grown warmer in recent months and even led to speculation that Saudi Arabia may be open to accepting the Chinese yuan in oil trading instead of the US dollar. If this happens, it could have wide-ranging implications for the global economy. It doesn't mean the US dollar will cease to be the world's reserve currency, but its dominance could definitely be brought into question. Since we've touched upon China's role in the Middle East, let's move on to our next topic, which is about Saudi Arabia and Iran, two major regional foes in the Middle East, starting to take baby steps towards restoration of bilateral ties. In a previous episode, we explained to you how China helped broker a deal between the two regional rivals after 7 years of icy relations. Many questioned whether this was just a deal for geopolitical optics, but it could be that both Saudi Arabia and Iran are keen to take this forward. Earlier this week, the foreign ministers of both countries spoke over the phone, their fourth or fifth call in the last 3 weeks. Under the China-brokered pact that the two countries agreed to recently, their foreign ministers would arrange the return of their ambassadors and discuss means of boosting relations. So it is possible that these recent phone calls will come to fruition very soon and that envoys could be sent to either country within a couple of months. Reports have also emerged that the two foreign ministers could be attending a one-on-one meeting before the holy month of Ramadan ends. Under the China-brokered pact, the two countries also agreed to revive a security cooperation agreement originally signed in 2001 and a 1998 General Agreement for Cooperation in areas such as trade, investment, tech, science, culture and sports. But Iran aside, Saudi Arabia has been making some interesting geopolitical moves. Not only has it allowed China to help broker a deal with Iran, but it has also come to an agreement with Syria through Russian-brokered talks. To top it off, the OPEC Plus, in which Saudi Arabia plays a dominant role, recently announced a surprise oil production cut, sending global oil prices up and further annoying Western nations. So to summarize, Saudi Arabia is mending fences with its rivals in the Middle East with the help of Russia and China, all while poking the West with oil production cuts. The Middle East is definitely a region to watch over the next couple of months as many geopolitical shifts appear to be taking place. Now, for our last topic, we're going to do an exercise that our regular viewers are very familiar with, comparing and contrasting the readouts from two different foreign ministries. We've done this many times before, and today we're looking at how Russia and the US have presented a phone call between Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Earlier this week, Lavrov and Blinken spoke at a time when the bilateral tensions between the two countries seem at an all-time high, especially with the arrest of a Wall Street Journal reporter, Ivan Gershkovich, in Moscow. It's clear that relations between Russia and the US are indeed at an all-time low, and though we've seen prisoner swaps between the two countries just last December, getting Ivan Gershkovich back to safety may be tougher. Why? We'll get into this in a bit. First, let's look at the two statements made by the Russian and US foreign ministries. From the US side, we can see that Blinken raised the issue of not just the Wall Street Journal reporter's arrest, but also Paul Whelan, a former US Marine who has been in a Russian jail since mid-2020. From the Russian side, we can see that Moscow does not have any intention to release the Wall Street Journal reporter, who they say had been caught red-handed while attempting to obtain classified information constituting a state secret. The Russian readout also says that Lavrov criticized the uproar being raised by officials in Washington and the Western media over the US journalist's arrest, adding that there is a clear intent to give this case a political slant. If we read between the lines, neither side is meeting each other halfway. And the timing of this is also crucial. Finland, which was once a neutral player in Europe, has officially joined NATO, much to Russia's disdain. Not to mention, Russia is still reeling from an explosion that tore through a cafe in the country's second largest city just last Sunday, and which killed a well-known pro-Putin military blogger and injured 30 other people. Thank you for watching. This is Pia Krishnankutty for ThePrint.